We're heading to Los Angeles today on our favourite aircraft, the Airbus A380, in what we believe to be the best bang for your buck economy seat on the aircraft, or perhaps in the entire fleet. We arrived at Terminal 5 around 11 AM. Sadly, the short stay car park drop and go parking now incurs an additional cost for driving your vehicle in. This wasn't the case last year, so £7.50 and an elevator trip later we finally arrived. Now this trip was happening on the same day that the conflict between Iran and Israel was at its peak, so tensions were a little higher with us travelling to the US, and we saw firsthand a lot of trips to the Middle East being affected. Now we paid up front for our seat selection on the A380, but we did think it was worth a quick chat with a check-in agent on costs to upgrade the flight to business class.
You want to go straight to business, 1,150, and first class
together or each.
To be honest, £1,000 each for business class on a 10-hour flight isn't that bad. But the A380s hadn't had their refurbishment yet to Club World Suites, and considering we'd already paid for our economy seat selection, we decided against this upgrade. Had this been on the A350, I think we'd have gone for it. Okay, so where are these seats that we've booked, and what makes them the best bang for your buck? Well, some of you probably guessed this already, but these seats are situated at the very rear of the upper deck of the A380, where the cabin narrows, leaving a 2-4-2 configuration for economy. This area is where airlines such as Emirates include their bar area. Now, we sat here last year on the way to Miami, but this year we chose some of the extra legroom seats, specifically 80 Juliet and 80 Kilo. The aircraft operating today's flight, British Airways Flight 269, was Golf X-Ray Lima Echo Juliet, a 10-year-old Airbus A380. As is standard with BA, boarding was total chaos, with everyone pushing and shoving and doing their absolute best to totally ignore the boarding group requests. Never mind though, we were soon heading onto the upper deck for our fairly long walk to the rear cabin, past both business and premium. I love the music that British Airways play when boarding, it really makes you feel at peace for your flight. On to our seat then. Now I can't lie, trying to not film anybody as 500 people board a jet isn't the easiest thing in the world, so I'm sorry if this isn't the greatest footage. You're given a blanket and a pillow ready and waiting at your seat, and sadly a total lack of window. The star of the show though is this unlimited legroom. With this seat you are situated right next to a door, but the extreme legroom I think makes up for the shortcomings and the size of this cabin, just 4 rows in total for a maximum of 32 passengers and 2 cabin crew. In a standard seat in this cabin you're normally treated to a huge storage bin between your seat and window. Unfortunately, the front row seats are relegated to a small mesh holder, but it does the job for a bottle of water or your blanket. British Airways' antiquated IFE pops up from the armrest in this seat, something I was a little concerned with but actually came to love throughout the flight. More on this later. You get a pair of cheap headphones as standard in economy. I'd read online that the door makes you feel a little claustrophobic in this seat. Personally, I thought that it was okay, and there was a slight breeze from the door, which personally I liked considering there are no individual air vents, and a huge pet peeve of mine on aircraft is cabins being boiling hot for the entire flight. The IFE, as mentioned, feels totally ancient. The touchscreens feel like you're trying to use your iPhone in the shower, and the resolution feels like something out of 2008 YouTube. But this is of course the same as any other economy seat on any of the BA original cabin A380s. The benefit of this seat though is there's no giant IFE box obscuring your legroom, dumping out heat like it's trying to mine Bitcoin as you play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
First officer South, it's my pleasure to be flying today. Alongside me, Captain and Pilot Command Jim Hornsby, because it is a long flight today, we do carry one extra pilot, and that's today's Senior First Officer David Green. A fantastic team of 22 in the cabin today, led by the Flight Manager Dion Saunders. Dion and her team are here primarily for your safety, but also, of course, your comfort. A point for me to mention today is regarding the seatbelt policy here at British Airways. After departure, the captain and I do anticipate being able to turn off the seatbelt signs, enabling you to walk around the cabin. However, there is always a chance that on this 10 hours and 40-minute flight to Los Angeles that you may encounter the odd lump and bump despite the smooth forecast conditions. So, if the seatbelt signs do come on again, can you please ensure that you're in your correct seat with your seatbelt securely fastened?
It never fails to amaze you when flying the A380. 25 crew with up to 500 passengers just feels insane. 10 hours and 40 minutes is a long old flight, so I was very glad for this seat.
I must confess, a sentiment of the most tender nature. Welcome, everyone. We will now demonstrate the safety features of this aircraft, and your attention is essential.
Whilst this cabin does seat just 32 passengers, there is always the chance one of those passengers is a baby. Honestly, I'd probably be crying too if I didn't have the extra legroom, so I can't blame them. I like the lightheartedness of the safety demonstration, even if it's on a slightly small, outdated IFE, but if you do want to watch the full thing, I'll put a link to it in the video description. Before long, it was time for our flight crew to power up the mighty Rolls-Royce Trent 900 high bypass turbofan engines. Now I had a few choices of view for this takeoff. Either Johnny, our fantastic cabin crew who was sat facing, a piece of white cabin wall, closing my eyes, or turning my neck 120 degrees to the right to see the runway disappearing from the distance. Luckily for me, you have a better option. The guys over at Flight Focus 365 and Josh, who was sat at home wishing he was going to Los Angeles instead of me, captured X-Ledge blasting out of Heathrow like a homesick angel. With this being an A380, I would say it felt more like a very overweight homesick angel. Now, say what you like about me, but I don't think takeoff will ever get old. The engine's powering up to about 40%, the growl, the cabin plastic shaking, and the feeling of lifting into the air. Thanks to Flight Focus 365 for this footage. Their channel link will be in the description of this video. Top guys for letting us use this. So the clock has begun, 10 hours and 40 minutes, and with the takeoff time at around 3 PM, that puts us landing at LAX about 1 AM UK time. So some sleep was definitely going into this flight plan. I actually got up on this particular morning at 4 AM and headed to the gym near Heathrow just to time myself out in anticipation for the flight. I had some work to do, so I fired up my laptop and stretched out just ahead of BA's complimentary drink and salted pretzel service. You either love it or you hate it. Pretty quickly I gave up trying to do any work and tried to watch Friday night dinner. I was feeling pretty tired already, so I had high hopes for some sleep. Dinner was served about an hour after takeoff. I went with potato gnocchi with chicken, and my partner had a mushroom pasta of some sort. The bread resembled bread opposed to a rock, and the sticky toffee pudding was particularly nice. Remember to use the salt and pepper in the cutlery pouch though, I forgot. As with most long haul flights, you get complimentary drinks. I went with white wine and a Sprite on the side. Water is provided with all meals. As I drank my wine, I thought to myself, this seat kinda gives me vibes from a business class in an era with no lie-flat beds. Maybe with a little bit less recline. Before long, the lights were dimmed in the cabin and attendants requested passengers to manually shut their window blinds in the interest of everyone getting some sleep. The crew were available to request drinks at any time, and they often popped through the cabin with juice or water. Whilst 10 hours on a plane isn't the most entertaining, there's enough to do between the IFE, your own gadgets, and the provided in-seat power to keep you satisfied. I was glad for the legroom and the extended space in front of us to the tray table to rest my laptop on. I could jump up from my seat whenever I wanted without putting the tray table away or disturbing anyone. Speaking of which, the restroom is in very close proximity to this seat, but with two available there was rarely any disturbance to us. The restroom was standard for economy but kept very clean by our cabin crew. I managed about 3 hours of sleep on this flight, which is surprising for me. I usually never sleep on planes. I closed my eyes to do so and suddenly hear
air pressure.
You ever made a really serious mistake?
I guess that's my fault for watching many hours of air crash investigation and Mentor Pilot, but anywho, I woke up with less than 2 hours of the flight left, enough time to enjoy the second meal service and freshen up. I had thought we'd be having breakfast, but I suppose even on our time it was still late evening, so chicken and potatoes it was.
Some scattered cloud, about 2,000 people, a very pleasant afternoon indeed. At the moment we're not predicting any delays from air traffic control. When we do incur any, I'll be sure to get back and let you know. Good cabin crew, that's 40 minutes to landing. 40 minutes to landing, thank you.
The bright sunshine outside was certainly an adjustment, but after the captain's announcement it wasn't long before we began our descent into LAX. Let's recap the seat then. The drawback for me in this seat is no window and the slight lack of storage space, but we were able to store our bags in the overhead, and there is a small amount of storage space next to the seat. During the flight I just kept my laptop bag by my feet and only had it stowed for takeoff and landing. I found the door to be not much of an issue, and as mentioned before, the extreme legroom and the tray table not restricting any movement away from the seat made this worth every penny. I also quite like being close to the restroom personally. There were never really any queues, or the odd passenger did leave the door open with the lights on in there. But hang on George, what about the cost of this seat? Well, it cost me 119 Great British pounds. Now, the year before when we went to Miami, the cost of this smaller cabin in a standard seat was £76, so the additional cost was only really about 43 quid. £43 over a 10-hour flight works out about £4 an hour, but if we just look at the full price of £119, that's still just £11.90 an hour, or about $16. Compare this to the cost of premium economy for this flight, which showed an upgrade of £320, or £32 an hour, and that's without the extreme extra legroom or seat selection. I do think this is possibly the best economy seat on the A380. Now sadly, the Airbus A380 at British Airways is well due refurbishment. According to the cabin crew, the rear cabin on the upper deck will be used for Club World suites moving forward, meaning these bargain seats are likely to be removed. Refurbishment's due to start sometime next year, providing there are no delays. Now it will take time for the entire fleet to receive this refurbishment, with a total of 12 A380s, but if you're watching this video in the future, ensure you check seat wraps to validate your aircraft has the older cabin still. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we hope to see you in the next one.